Hello and welcome back to Building Global Success, Mastering Change Management in GCCs, where we delve into key elements of building global capability centres and the leadership strategies that make them thrive. I'm your host today, Ray Mead. I'm a consultant in project management, transformation and change, based out of Hampshire in the UK. And I'm thrilled to say I'm joined today by one of our members here at the Leadership Collective. It's Casey Dudley, Human Resources Director at Advanced Clinical, out of Austin, Texas. Welcome back, Casey. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you today?
Very good. Excellent. Thank you very much. So we've had some fascinating discussions so far around the change program you've led in India and the Centre of Excellence you've built there, and especially some chats around the cultural aspects last time. Today, we're going to talk more around kind of the measuring success and how we kind of how we can kind of prove that it has been successful, and how can we instill a culture of kind of continuous improvement going on from here. So just starting off then, when you looking back to when you first started this program, was there a clear picture of what success looked like? Was there a good view of, okay, we know what we're doing, but how do we know that we've done it successfully?
No, no. So actually, there was I remember my first meeting I walked into with the leadership team for this project. There was a vague idea, right? We were told we're going to have business operations in India. That was the whole goal. That was the goal statement. Yeah,
And that was it.
yeah, yeah.
The rest
And
you
so
had to figure out.
right, right. And so my change management hat went on immediately, right? So there was little to no alignment on the why. So what were the outcomes we were looking for? That hadn't been discussed out loud with the greater populations. So one of the first thing I did as a change manager was to align on a purpose statement and objectives. We felt that was really important, and it's kind of change management 101, right? It's like it was almost like we had a goal, but it wasn't a smart goal yet, right? So just like any goal that you're setting up as an individual, we need to do that as a business.
And you don't know how at this point, do you? It's kind of, at the start of a big change program like that, especially when you've been given a vague kind of approach or a vague statement of what you want to achieve. You may know what you need to do, but you don't know how to do it yet. So you've got to kind of start with those objectives and then work backwards from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And for transparency, the sponsor of this project was and is our CEO. So these questions I'm asking are to our very most senior leader, and I trying to instill change management best practices, be respectful, and get the information I need all at the same time as a fairly junior team member on the team.
Yeah, well, I often coach when I'm coaching transformational leaders and things like that. I often say sometimes the people that are paying for all of this and actually wishing for it to happen, they don't actually know the specifics of what they want. They don't actually, they want you to figure that bit out, but you can't because you need that direction. So there's this element of being able to manage up, of being able to kind of like meet your senior responsible owner or your sponsor halfway, and kind of use your expertise, as you mentioned, in change management. And this is what I say to the people I train or coach, is that you're the expert in that field, you're the expert in the change, in delivering the program, and that's what you're there for. So rely on that and just kind of ask the right questions to tease out what you need from your senior leaders.
Yeah, that really aligns with my full-time job and human resources, right? I have an area of expertise, but I'm certainly not an expert in what the business is doing on a day-to-day basis. And so it takes you some time to build that credibility, right? So I know what I'm competent in, and I certainly have confidence, but how can you sell that to your leaders? And so this was taking that same approach, but with the change management initiative. So yeah, we through that design and asking questions, and really aligning on the importance of having a clear purpose. That was important, right? Is um, teaching and explaining why the purpose statement was so important. We ultimately got to our formal purpose statement was the India Center of Excellence Change Management Initiative objective is to formalize a center of excellence for biometrics that establishes the blueprint for expansion in India with a nimble approach to be proactive and anticipation of future business and client needs.
Yeah. So yeah, and I like that the wording there. I find when I'm crafting these things, you really, it comes down to the individual words, the nouns and the verbs that you use, because you can hook into them as part of your change management, expertise. So words like nimble, and proactive, as part of that purpose statement, they can unfold into whole work streams, just to kind of realize that particular word.
I'm pretty sure this sentence was rewritten by me, my chief people officer, and one of the project management leads on this initiative about 20 times. And I think I felt weird about the word nimble at first, because it's not a word that you use often in a business setting, right? And so we thought, adaptable or flexible, but we were like, nimble's really what we mean. And it proved necessary later on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I often come back to JFK's purpose statement or vision statement, around the moon landing program. I know it's a famous one to kind of come back to, but the way that he kind of said, by the time this decade is out, I think he said it in 1962, something like that. By the time this decade is out, we will have, sent a man to the moon and brought him home safely again. It's just that safely word, and not just send a man to the moon. You could have left it there, but send a man to the moon, bring him home safely again. So he's still alive. So that must have kicked off lots of different projects just to kind of preserve. Not that they wouldn't have done anyway, but it's being very specific, isn't it? Coming back to what you mentioned about SMART objectives, that is the perfect SMART objective, isn't it? It's kind of, by the time this decade is out, it's time constrained, and but it's very specific in its choice of words, I think, such that it takes courage to put a statement out there like that. It's kind of because it's so obvious if you succeed or fail in it. So saying that ahead of time is quite brave.
I also, and that's a wonderful example, because I think adding the safely active at the end of that got more people behind it too. And so by adding in making your goals more SMART or more objective is you're going to incite motivation or passion in others. So getting to the moon, okay, great, but having someone come back and tell you about it, that's amazing, right? And that's what we were able to achieve. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And from that statement, and again, the guidance I give on this, vision statements, purpose statements, and things, I've always kind of say to people, that they're the kind of statement that you could put at the bottom of your email signature. They're ones that you quite happily broadcast within, an appropriate audience, but ones that motivate, like you said, and ones that can be quite easily articulated, but as I say, it's got those hooks in it that you can then kind of, the next step would be to then go out and build specific objectives, wouldn't it?
Yep.
From that statement, to make that statement happen. So
Yep.
what kind of specific objectives did you build from yours?
Right. So after we really established that, and that kind of expanded the scope of the project, right? Because now I'm building a blueprint. I'm not just setting up India. We've actually kind of adjusted from here. This is actually now our blueprint for entry into every country. It's kind of that gift that keeps on giving. So some of the objectives that we and designed and built from that purpose statement was designing a biometrics organization where all roles are integrated into the organization and project processes. As we talked about before, this was an integrated solution. This was not a silo or a standalone business unit. Or a decentralized place of work. We are going to enhance our current capabilities and offerings to our clients. So that's kind of that follow the sun model that we were talking about. Seamlessly deliver on work product to clients. That's going back to that integration. Integration was a big theme that we talked about here. Ensuring that the new branch is assimilated to retain and enhance company culture. So we wanted them to be part of the team. And then maintain positive morale across the team and limit increased attrition. And so those were, and those two bullet points are really about that change management process for our existing team members. Do they understand the why and what will, and do they know how to adapt to the change? So those were the key objectives we had following the conversations.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And I mean, my industry at the moment, transformation, project program management, is obsessed with value at the moment. It's about, how do we deliver value? How do we demonstrate value? And it's a difficult thing because it can be a very abstract term, value. It's, for one thing, it's subjective. What one organization and what one person values is different from another. So, you've got to kind of work on crafting those statements and those objectives, as we said, in order to kind of ensure that, it is valuable to the organization and the stakeholders involved. But one of the ways we do that is to kind of break that concept of value up into benefits, specific benefits that we can kind of pull out. And these are outcomes, but they are desired outcomes.
Right.
You can often kind of state them in superlatives, really. We want more of this. We want to be faster at that, less of this, more of that. But crucially, then you can unpack them later on. It starts there as a shopping list, but then you kind of unpack them. So once you've kind of got your direction, your purpose, your vision, kind of breaking that down into specific, measurable kind of desired outcomes or benefits, and ultimately that's the way you kind of create value. So did you translate any of those kind of objectives into specific benefits as well?
Yeah, we thought that was important because it explains the why to our greater audiences. Because all those objectives, okay, yeah, I guess we can all agree on those. But why do it in the first place, right? So we need to define the benefits to the organization. What is the value to the organization? So we really identified those as follows. So continuing to expand our global presence. We want to be a global clinical research organization. That means continuing to open presences in new countries. Adding to the level of service we can offer our clients. Continuing to be competitive in the market. We need to continue getting new work, gaining access to lower cost resources, and then obtaining local expertise for client needs. So I mentioned our partner before that has a tangent business to ours. So now we're able to offer him those data management services and meet that client need.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. And then, kind of selling that case of why is one mountain, I suppose, to climb. And we talked about that as well, didn't we, in our previous chats. But then there's kind of, again, that idea of being able to, fast forward to the end of the change and kind of go, well, did we achieve that? Was it measurable? Was it, I think it was Galileo who said, measure what is measurable, but what is not measurable, make it so. As in kind of try and measure everything basically, if you can. Although some things are easier than others. Were you able to kind of develop specific measures for each of those benefits?
I wouldn't say for all of them. That's fair. And I would say this is actually one of the challenges I had because change management best practices agrees that you should measure success. So many of these objectives and benefits are difficult to measure as this is a people change. We're really focusing on people here, not a technical or system change. So our key measures were employee buy-in and employee satisfaction. So typically, we run an employee engagement survey only once a year in June. This change happened in November. So I knew I needed to gather data quicker than that. So I mentioned before that I used our employee recognition program to get anonymous feedback on the change resistance. So I used a really simple smiley face system with a numerical value tied to the back end. So a frowny face, a straight face, and a smiley face to measure employees' feelings about the change. Our onboarding plan for the new hires in India has a 90-day check-in. So we'll get to see how our India-based team members are acclimating to the business. And of course, we'll be looking at those June engagement survey results once we get to our full engagement survey and closely looking at those directly impacted groups and how did that change from 2024 to 2025. And then, of course, we're looking at our attrition rates and the reason people are leaving. We're looking at our time to deliver to clients. So are we delivering faster now that we're following the sun? And then finally, looking at our proposals that are being accepted. Are we having competitive pricing? Is that change being realized? So using all of this information, we may lead to adjustments to our blueprint for regional expansion. But ultimately, refining the way we measure is going to be something that's important to really put that value, as you said, on the change management process. Was it time well spent going through all of these additional communications and trainings?
Yeah, and it's a perfect example, I think, that you've mentioned there with, proposal acceptance rate. That's got to be one of the key clear measures for you guys. It's kind of like why are we doing this? Because we need to stay competitive. Well, how can we measure that? Then how many proposals are being accepted. It's sometimes you have to be a bit creative about how you measure, but that's a real, I think, business benefit for for the organization that you should be able to see kind of and track going into the future. And you mentioned about smiley faces. It's I love things like that. It's just very simple, very visual. They connect. You don't have to sit there and think about the definition. Are you somewhat satisfied? And well, what does that mean? It's kind of just very simple visual. Any human on the planet can kind of identify with that, and you pretty much very clearly can see if there's a problem or not. It's used a lot in my space in agile project management when you're doing retrospectives. Kind of regular points where the team can get together and reflect on how they feel about how the project is going and etc. And quite often we kind of have like little smiley faces and go and put them in different compartments on the wall or whatever, and it's a conversation starter, and it helps to take the temperature of the room.
Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of like the start, stop, continue initiatives that you've seen probably in work groups that need to prioritize work. If you think about it so simply in those terms, like what is not going right that I need to stop doing? What can I start doing? And then what's going well that we're going to keep continuing doing? And when you put words into or thoughts into such a simple format, you can really make some impactful changes quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. That's another one I've used. So moving on, in our first session, we talked, we mentioned about ADKAR and about how you've been using it as a framework. You've been using it for assessments and, partly linking in with, how people are feeling about how it's going, etc. The last step of ADKAR is reinforcement and talking about sustainability and kind of, continuous improvement into the future. How have you gone about building that into, that sustainability of the change into the program?
So, in my opinion, reinforcement stage is the most challenging because this is when you realize change management actually never ends. You're going to keep doing it.
Recurring nightmare. Yeah.
Right. So you better love it. So if your impacted groups regress, then you have to start the ad card journey all over again. So that's why I would also say the reinforcement stage and creating sustainability is one of the most important stages, because we certainly don't want to repeat that ad card journey. So we focus on a few key initiatives to build sustainability into this change. It may sound similar to anytime you want to reinforce any behavior, and that is embed a culture of collaboration and teamwork that transcends beyond regional boundaries. And that is those integrated teams, right? They're depending on each other. So you can't just go off and work in your silo. You're not working with your partners for 3 months. You are part of a team. Um, Celebrating achievements. I talked about that in our last part as well. So calling out when our India-based team members were part of some organizational success. So I'm not saying that they have to be the stars of that success. It's just showing that one initiative, one proposal, one deliverable was met that involved our India-based team members. Recognizing and showcasing success stories of cross-border collaboration. So really early on, recognizing early acceptance and how that supports company goals. Feedback. So we encourage that ongoing feedback and communication channels so that we're addressing those challenges and issues as they arise. We don't want to hear about the problem after it's already happened. Tell me
Yeah.
about it as you
Nobody
see it.
does. Yeah.
Right, right. Tell me about it as you see it coming up, and we'll address it. And then finally, incorporating cross-cultural competency into a performance evaluations. So I shared earlier that we made leading through change required for all leaders. It's also one of their core competencies on their performance evaluations. So they are held accountable to the success of change, and that their bonuses and their pay increases are dependent upon it. So really tying into this has to happen, and we're in it together.
Well, that's one way to make it real, isn't it? Rather than just all getting together and talking nicely about why can't we all just get along. If you if you kind of make it, you link it to performance management, it becomes very real for people, and they'll take it seriously and give it a good effort. But so we're talking about defining benefits and how benefits are, I suppose, they're desired outcomes, but they're consequences of change, essentially. The reason you do things. And then there's this horrible word as well that we often use, which is disbenefits. It's an awful word, but it kind of, it's a word that tries to encapsulate the negative consequences of change, or the inevitable negative consequences of change. Because if you change something, mostly it's going to be for a good reason. That's why you're doing it, and hopefully you achieve those benefits that you wanted to achieve. But sometimes along the way, some negative things are inevitably going to happen that you kind of have to anticipate and manage and mitigate, etc. So thinking about your program and your change, were there any unintended, because they can be intended or unintended, any unintended consequences of change?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure there's more to come, right? So I'll start with a little bit more of a disbenefit or a negative consequence here. So identifying naysayers. So some of the directly impacted group were nervous about the onboarding of people doing the same job as them. Upon closer inspection, those that were unhappy about the change were most of the time lower performers. So they were comfortable just skating by, and by setting the new standards and expectations for the role of high achieving India-based employees, some of them decided that this isn't the place for them. So now our intention was not to shift jobs to India. However, if current employees chose to leave, we can certainly find that skill set in our new center of excellence, and we will make adjustments as needed. And that's a hard truth. It's not one that I wanted to happen, but we are okay with it happening as well. On a more positive side, and a benefit that we saw is our relationship with our partner in India has expanded opportunities for us. So without embarking on this initiative, we would not have met him and had the opportunity to gain new work. And I would say that's why networking is key, and at every level. So fostering relationships amongst different organizations that can benefit each other. That's at the macro level of networking, right? We think about us going to a conference and shaking hands with one person, but what can that lead to long term for your organization? So that's the value of networking for an organization, not just you as an individual.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And it's good to capture those unexpected or unintended, benefits that you're achieving as well, because it's all part of the story, isn't it? It's, all part of the package of why we did it, and reinforcing that. And you mentioned about how you've learned from previous changes that you've done before, and, those learnings, good and bad, can go into that as well.
I think that that's another interesting thing is, what would the entry into India have looked like had we not had a formal change management effort? We don't know. So it's hard to really tie in the true value of change management, because you're never going to know what you don't know. And so what we can say is that there were no change management efforts prior to India, entry into India from an organizational level. And we made that change today. So will we see significant differences in our cultural differences, and an uptick in collaboration across our regions, and a greater feeling of belonging throughout our organization based on change management efforts? That's what I hope to see in the 2025 Employee Engagement Survey.
Excellent. And I'm sure you will. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for sharing all of your expertise, Casey. It's been really fascinating. It's been really interesting. I'm sure it is for our listeners as well. Your insights, how to ensure the change aspects of building GCCs or centres of excellence, and ensuring that they've been managed smoothly, they're going to be very valuable for everyone, I'm sure, listening, and any organisation looking to build strong, integrated global teams, wherever they might be and whatever they're doing. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review, and share it with others. You can also find mine and Casey's LinkedIn profiles in the show notes to connect with us directly. We'd love to hear from you, of course. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we continue to explore leadership and global growth in the world of GCCs.